Everybody, especially to CPPR and Sacred Heart College for organizing this event. It's very glad to be here, especially to share the bias with my friends from university days. We get to meet each other for these conferences these days, in fact. Yeah, 2 days ago, Dawson called me and warned me that you can't speak more than 15 minutes. So I'll try to be within my allowed time. If I cross that, you can warn me. I'm sure Uma will look into the larger picture of US foreign policy. I'll stay focused on the Middle East, which is my comfort zone. 8 years ago, President Barack Obama began his presidency offering a new deal, a new beginning to the people in the Middle East. I'll stick to Middle East because since we are talking about the American foreign policy, they are much more, they use Middle East. Unlike we Indians, we call it West Asia. And even the people in the region are also more comfortable with the term Middle East. So 8 years down the line, it's time to ask the question, was there a new beginning? Or was the Obama presidency a radically different one compared to his predecessors? See, there are different theories if you look into it. One is, of course, is that one is coming from his critics, which says that Obama's policy towards the region has affected United States retreat from the Middle East and hurt the country's interests in the long term, which is mostly coming from his critics and the Republican side. And there is another view which says that Obama is an idealist who lived up to the Nobel Committee's decision to confer him with the Nobel Peace Prize, and an anti-war president who didn't bomb Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, who went for the Iranian nuclear deal. So there are these two divergent views. I would like to take a middle path. I don't believe that Barack Obama was an idealist, not in his foreign policy. And I don't think that his policies had hurt America's long-term interests either. Basically, these arguments are based on three policy decisions. One is Obama's decision to draw down from Iraq. Secondly, his refusal to bomb the Syrian government. Thirdly, the Iran nuclear deal. If we begin with Iraq, even in the last days of, during the second term of President George W. Bush's presidency, there was somehow a consensus, I think, within the United States, at least among the, in the administration or certainly among the strategic community, that the Iraq war was disastrous. They went to Iraq saying that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which they couldn't find. And the war turned out to be a complete disaster. It did not only destroy the Iraqi state, spread instability in the region, and also the threat of jihadist violence has also gone up after the invasion of Iraq. Not just that, from a strategic point of view, for the Americans, Iran's regional stature has gone up after the war in Iraq. So which actually affected the United States' interest in the region, because we know that Iran has been a hostile power to the US at least since 1979, since the Iranian Revolution. So certainly there was a consensus within the Obama administration that the war has to be brought to an end, and the United States has to right-size its presence in Iraq. So obviously, one of the first decisions of Obama that's affecting the region was to take out most of the US forces from Iraq. And this decision was based on the kind of stability, somehow temporary stability, if so to call, which Iraq had seen after President Bush surge and the Sunni awakening. That's what they call. That was kind of a tribal army set together to fight the jihadists, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, in Iraq. Following that, there was some kind of, or at least the violence has gone down in Iraq. So what Obama did was to take out most of the US troops, maintain a few, and retain the leverage, the American leverage, its capability to influence the politics in Iraq, which it continues to do. And secondly, when it comes to Iran, what was the other option? What were the other options Obama had other than going for a diplomatic solution to the Iranian nuclear deal? Because you see, there was high decibel warmongering during the first presidency of Bush the Jr. Not only against Iraq, Iraq was already attacked, and Iran and North Korea were the other two countries that were part of the axis of evil. And there were talks in 2007-8, I was a student, I remember, whether the United States will send troops to Iran. But that high decibel warmongering has gone down, particularly after the 2007-2008, the oil shock, when international crude oil prices went up to $140 a barrel, which was followed by the economic crisis. And also the experience of Iraq has prevented the United States from going to Iran. So that was the Iraq experience was there in front of President Obama. Secondly, the economic crisis was still there. So risking another attack, and Iran is a much bigger military power compared to Iraq. Iran was not Iraq. Iraq was a small fry for the Americans, because after 10 years of sanctions, Iraq was nothing. And Saddam Hussein didn't have any major regional, friends, neither in the region nor in the global arena. But Iran was completely different. Iran retains a substantial influence, leverage in the region through the Shia corridor on the one side, and it is a friend of Russia. So going to war with Iran would have been riskier, very, very dangerous. So the other option is to look out for the diplomatic solution, which is what Obama did. And his attempts to reach out to the Iranians in the beginning were not fruitful. But once Rouhani became the president, there were kind of mutual understanding between both sides that a diplomatic solution to the nuclear crisis would be the best one. And the Russians and the Chinese and the other European powers had also pitched in, which made the Iranian nuclear deal possible. But of course, you see, Iran is a very controversial power in the region that stands opposed to America's regional interests. Firstly, Israel would not accept any agreement to bring Iran back into the diplomatic and economic mainstream of the Middle East. And then there is a Cold War going on in the Middle East between the Iranians and the Saudis. And the Saudis are the United States, after Israel, the most trusted allies in the region. So, of course, there will be problems in the United States' approach to the Middle East if you are going to accommodate Iran back into the mainstream. So, what Obama did, he didn't just shun his allies as what it is made out to be in the media. I represent the media, but you could take it as a self-critic. See, it is like you see that the personal chemistry between President Obama and Netanyahu was not very good, and America's relationship with Israel has hit a rock bottom during President Obama's tenure. All those things you see from both the left and right of the spectrum, political spectrum. But in fact, President Obama is the only president in the modern American history who has vetoed every single resolution in the UN Security Council against Israel. Even Reagan let 21 resolutions pass. Not even a single one passed in the last 8 years against Israel in the UN Security Council. And a couple of weeks ago, you also saw that there was a $38 billion military assistance agreement signed between Israel and the United States. Of course, Obama administration had occasionally raised issues about raised voices against the continuing settlement activities in the West Bank. Obama's America's ambassador in Tel Aviv had even criticized Israel's double laws towards the Palestinians and the Israelis. We call it apartheid. That he didn't use the word, but still. So all those criticisms were coming up, but institutionally, the United States or the Obama administration stayed solidly behind Benjamin Netanyahu's government in Israel. And secondly, the Saudis. The Saudis were so what Obama did, Obama pursued America's national interest in the region by going forward with the Iran nuclear deal, and on the other side, to placate the Israelis, he has offered unprecedented diplomatic support to the Israelis. On the other side, the Saudis were also naturally upset with the Iran nuclear deal. So what he did was that Obama, the administration just turned a blind eye towards the Saudi adventurism in the region. Now, when we are holding this conference, for the last 18 months, the Saudis are bombing Yemen, one of the poorest countries in the Arab world. The United States hasn't raised even a single voice about it. And there is no international efforts to rein in the Saudis. So the Saudis have been given a free hand. And also last year in 2015, a couple of months after the Saudi invasion of, Saudi bombing of Yemen started, the United States reached a $60 billion arms agreement with Saudi Arabia. So Obama was trying to balance between his interests and his allies. So that is what we saw in the Iran nuclear deal. The same thing is applicable to Syria as well. In Syria, the criticism is that President Obama had a chance to bomb the government of President Bashar al-Assad and save Syria from the kind of violence it is now witnessing. But the reality is a little more complicated, because though the Russians interfered in Syria only in last year, Bashar al-Assad remains a potent ally of Russia. And also, he was directly backed by the Iranians. And the Hezbollah, Shia Hezbollah fighters were also fighting on behalf of Bashar al-Assad. Obama was in fact one of the first world leaders who called for Assad to resign in the wake of the Syrian crisis. And the administration had also imposed sanctions on the Syrian government. But he didn't go for the military option because, of course, it would have been riskier. And still, I'm not disputing that Assad is a monster. He is killing his own people. But still, 60% of the Syria's population are living in countries, in the areas controlled by the regime. So if there is going to be an aerial attack on the government, that's going to be disastrous for the civilian populace on the one side, and on the other side, who's coming after Assad? And secondly, what would the Russians and the Iranians do? So it would have been a messier situation if the Americans had attacked the Syrian government. So what Obama did, Obama on the one side, he focused on the ISIS. He attacked Syria. The American air campaign is going on, which started in August 2014, if I am not mistaken. Or last year. It's still going on. And this aerial bombardment is focused on the Islamic State. And on the other side, the United States did not accept Assad as a legitimate ruler of Syria. And what the Obama administration did was to bankroll the Syrian rebellion. Sections of the rebel groups are directly controlled and funded funded and aided by the United States. And now the reason because the Russians and the Americans are negotiating a peace deal for the Syria is precisely because of this. Because the Russians are supporting the government of Bashar al-Assad and the Americans are bankrolling sections of the rebels fighting the government of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. So in Syria, Obama avoided the riskier way of bombing the Syrian government, but he didn't retreat from Syria. Instead, he supported the rebels indirectly, his proxies, the American proxies or regional proxies, he did them in. Does that mean that Obama is opposed to wars? No, he attacked Libya. We saw that in 2011. It's not just a US invasion. That's what the Americans call it. He led it from behind because it was a coalition attack that the French were there, the British were there, Arabs were also there. But fundamentally, we all know that it is the United States' decision to go to war in Libya. And they just created another Iraq out of Libya. What is Libya now? It is completely destroyed. There is no government in Libya. There are two governments apparently. I think there are three now. There is a unity government as well. So, and he went to war in Libya because going to war in Libya was relatively easier thing. Muammar Gaddafi, again, was not a friend of any great powers. Even the Russians supported the no-fly zone UN Security Council resolution in the UN, which means even the Russians are not opposed to the war. And nobody in the region, nobody in Africa, nobody in the Middle East was supporting Muammar Gaddafi. So it's easier. You can go to war in Libya, you can take him out, and then just leave Libya to whatever the gangs left in Libya. That's what they did. So I'll conclude here saying that Barack Obama, Gideon Ross of the Foreign Affairs editor recently wrote an essay on Obama saying that Obama is an ideological liberal with conservative temperament. I would rather say it this way: Obama may be a liberal, ideological liberal at home, but when it comes to foreign policy, Barack Obama is a conservative with realistic temperaments. Thank you very much.